Kevin, you got one of the essential elements of filmmaking, the old slate.
Yes, so this is referred to as a slate. If you look at this closely, you'll see that there are two different color inks right here. That's because the red ink was written in permanent marker, and I realized it at the last minute, and that if I wanted to do a thorough cleaning, it would take me about a minute to get it off, and I didn't want to go through that, so I just figured, you know what, I'll use a different color ink for the last slot.
I think it's a well-known it's not even really a secret if it's well-known, but in the industry, you actually a lot of times will mark with permanent marker, and then you write over it when you're ready to erase it with a dry erase marker, and then you can wipe away the permanent marker. Somehow the ink, the solvent in the dry erase ends up making it so you can erase the Sharpie. So that way you don't smudge it. Or you could do what I do, and I use a vis-a-vis wet erase marker. So...
Or you do what the really reckless person does, which is like, I'll just remember it. I'll just remember it.
Yeah, that's the thing. The slate is such a thing that just seems like a gimmick, but really, to the editor, this is so useful to be able to look at a frame and not have to open up every single clip. Just look at the little thumbnail and say, oh, okay, this is the shot. Let me use that one.
Yeah, and the other thing that I love is just a detail that we take for granted as members of the audience, because generally when we film stuff with like our own cameras or our phones and everything like that, the microphone is built into the camera. So the audio quality is not going to be the best. So you'll obviously remember from your camcorder days, or maybe even your Super 8 days if you figured that out, or even on your phone nowadays. Could sound better, but that's because when you film anything, you bring in quality microphones. Like we're using quality microphones right now to record our episodes, because like you will know the difference in the end. So you have to be able to line it up at the right moment, and when it makes this little sound, the editor knows, okay, I will line the sound up with what's in there. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole bunch of guys talking, and the audio is not going to line up.
A term for what Kevin just described is called dual system, where you have basically an audio recorder and a visual recorder, whether that's a film camera or something else. You could get high quality by plugging directly into a camera that's capable, but still, you never know. You might need that. The tool that you're familiar with from Singing in the Rain on, basically, the slate, the clapperboard.
I just think that when it comes to production, the better equipment you can get, you should just go for it, just overall.
And this thing is like $10. It's not...
Yeah.
You don't have to... I mean, they have the ones that have the time code built in, and that's great if you have a production that needs it. But seriously, this will get the job done 90% of the time.
Well, I mean, when I was talking about budget, I meant along the lines of like production in general, like recording sound or site or something like that. I mean, the big budget, the big equipment and everything doesn't automatically make it better, but it can improve it. It can make a difference.
But you still need to know fundamentals like clapperboard to sync it all up.
Yeah, another thing that some people need to know, I mean, a fundamental basic that I think everybody should know, that you don't even need to know in film school, is when you go to the movie, you need to be silent. You can't be whispering to your friends, who's this, who's that? Oh, I didn't like this scene. I didn't like that scene. What the heck are we doing here?
I have a funny story. So I think it was freshman year of college. I was seeing a movie with some friends, but I don't think I'd ever been to a movie with them before. I think it was probably the Grand Budapest Hotel. Was that the name of the movie?
Wes Anderson and
yeah,
Ray Fiennes?
Yeah, just the Grand Budapest, right? Yeah. So I turned to my friend and I'm like, I like to try to be courteous. I put my cell phone on silent, but if I have to take a call, if it's longer than 5 minutes, I'll see myself out. I don't want to, the look on her face was just utter horror. And I'm like, I'm kidding. Just screwing around. No, but some people, well, yeah, the texting away and all that, not the proper etiquette.
Etiquette, yes. So before you go to film school, learn etiquette in the movie theater.
Or even if you don't go to film school, it makes the movie much more enjoyable for everybody. Okay, so Kevin, you're holding a baseball bat. I don't think we're doing a mob movie today.
No, well, that would be a very, very interesting mob movie where I'm in a baseball jersey and carrying a bat.
Yeah, they utilize the bat. They don't necessarily get into full attire.
They don't want to advertise themselves to the world. I mean, some of the dumb, narcissistic mobsters probably want to, but in general...
All right, so Kevin, why do you have a baseball bat and attire?
And a ball as well. That is because the movie that we are doing this week is Field of Dreams, the 1979 iconic baseball fantasy with Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones. I mean, there's so much that we could say about it, and everybody probably, like I said, you may not have seen this movie, but you have seen the references. You've seen the parodies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like a lot of stuff we do, it's prevalent in pop culture in ways that people may not even realize. Like, even Hey Arnold, there's a scene where they're building a baseball field in that, and I think, looking back at it, I see some similarities.
Well, I mean, there's the line, if you build it, he will come. I mean, that's where it all comes from. Ultimately, no pun intended on the last part. The most recent one, I would say, is John Mulaney presenting at the Oscars last year.
Oh, yeah.
In which he is presenting Best Achievement in Sound Editing or Mixing or something like that. And instead of reading from the teleprompter, the prepared speech for him, he decided to go into a comedic take on the movie Field of Dreams.
It was so just candid. It was great. You sent this to me. I hadn't seen the movie, but I still appreciated the framework of the joke. And that after seeing the movie, going back and watching it again, it's like, that's really clever.
I mean, it really helped. I mean, he could have been talking about any movie when he was doing that kind of riff right over there, but it does help you appreciate this particular one even more.
Yeah, so Kevin, I take it, I mean, given you're very prepared, I'm guessing you're quite a fan of the game.
Yes, I am. I didn't start to appreciate it probably until I was 11. I didn't like sports until I was 11. And, I gravitated towards the Red Sox for being a historic team. I mean, I like the sport ultimately because of the pace. It was easy for me to follow along. I mean, I'm very easily distracted. So, I mean, like you're watching a football game, you got 11 guys on one side, you got 11 guys on the other side, you throw the ball in there, and it's just like, nope, I just got to rely on the broadcasters to point me out, okay, here's what's going on, here's what's going to happen after that. Don't ask me to call a play or anything like that. It's just like, please don't do this to me.
Well, as always, we tend to like to go to the crystal ball, which has been...
Then what?
Unreliable, but now seems to be smoking.
What, like a broken engine smoking, or
no, like
some
a cigarette,
supernatural?
Kevin.
What? You don't need to be so mean.
No, I get it. A crystal ball does not usually emit smoke. I would be concerned too, but this ball seems not too harmful, but definitely mischievous.
Look, I'm just asking a question, okay? As people have said, there are no stupid questions, okay? So you don't have to snap at me.
Well, there's no stupid questions, only bad ones.
Better than what somebody once told me years ago, which was, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people.
Oh, that's cynical.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, as always, I selected a tarot card that I felt represented the theme of the movie. This movie, I selected the Chariot, which I think really sums it up. So the Chariot represents determination, a sense of direction, and the overcoming of obstacles. Now, such is often the case, money, a problem we all know too well.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that a good chunk of movies' plots revolve around the lack of money and the need to acquire money, the MacGuffin that is driving the plot. I mean, anything as simple as saving the Muppet Theater from the Muppet movie 15 years ago to getting revenge on gangster Doyle Lonnegan in The Sting, one of the first movies that we covered.
Absolutely. And in this movie, this finance obstacle comes in the form of the antagonist, the main character Ray's brother-in-law.
Yes, and I will never forget learning at one point that an antagonist is not necessarily the bad guy or a bad guy in general. The antagonist is someone who has power over the protagonist that is, their obstacle to overcome. And I think it's very clear that, Ray's brother-in-law is not a bad guy, because at the end of the movie, he like the scales fall from his eyes and he's like, "Where'd these baseball players come from?" And he says to Ray a couple minutes later in an excited tone, "Don't sell this field."
Yeah, quite a shift.
Well, I mean, it's to emphasize he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He's his brother-in-law who cares about his sister, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So this was my pick this week. And the story for how I saw it was when I was 12 years old. I was just getting into the sport and the legacy of the Boston Red Sox and their history. And I remember saying to my parents, "Are there any movies about the Red Sox?" And my dad or my mom said, "Field of Dreams." And it's just that one scene over at Fenway Park.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It's like, oh, there we go. A little hint. How could you have a baseball movie without a little hint of the Red Sox?
I mean, you can do it with anybody over there, but it was just at the time when I was trying to see it. They were still cursed. They still hadn't won a World Series in 80 some odd years, and they were the perpetual underdogs. I'm like, when are they going to be the center of attention? When are they going to get a movie?
So clearly, the movie had an impact.
Yeah, even for that one scene, it was enough for me to watch it, and it left an impression on me. I think it's ultimately a love letter to the sport of baseball and the idealism that surrounds it. If you remember the monologue James Earl Jones gives near the climax of the movie, saying people will come, he waxes on poetically about when you arrive at this ballpark, the memories of your childhood will be so thick you'll have to brush them from your faces. It'll be as if you dipped yourselves in magic waters. And says the one constant through all the years has been baseball. America's been a blackboard erased and rewritten, but baseball has stood the mark of time. I mean, as a 34-year-old guy right now, we're watching a lot of really iconic moments right now, historic moments, and just to think that this is our chapter in American history, but there is something about this game that is going to help us distract us or at least console us during these times.
I didn't really follow or play any sports, but baseball was like the one that I actually could watch. And my grandmother, she was a huge Yankees fan, and then went to college in Boston, and basically it's an interesting kind of situation, similar to where I am, where it's like, how do you reconcile between the two teams? But it was one of the few sports I could actually watch and be like, okay, I understand kind of what's happening.
Well, like I was saying too, with myself, as much as I like other sports like football and hockey, the pace of baseball has just been a lot easier for me because it's one play at a time, and you're focusing on just where the ball is going. Compared to, like I said, football, 11 guys on one team, 11 guys on the other team, and the ball. So it's just it's a neurodivergent cluster fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say the movie was necessarily my preferred cup of tea. It was more of a green tea when I would have preferred an Earl Grey, but still, I recognize the merit and appreciate the fact that such a nice sport is being represented in cinema history.
Yeah, and there's the emotional connection, and I totally understand that. I mean, it's one thing to, like, for me, Robert Eggers, the guy who's been making the horror movies, Nosferatu and The Witch and The Lighthouse. I mean, overall, he's not my cup of tea either. There's something about the narrative that I don't enjoy as much as others. but I will not deny his merit and his accomplishments with all of his movies. He makes them very, very well. They're not something I watch for my own personal entertainment, but yeah, they're definitely worth discussing.
Yeah, so let's get into this one a little further.
Upon hearing the whisper of a specter, if you build it, he will come. Iowa corn farmer Ray Kinsella turns his property into a baseball field, bringing the ghosts of iconic baseball players, including Shoeless Joe Jackson. But he realizes there is more to be done. Along the way, he connects with several different characters who will have a part to play in this dramatic act of faith.
Yeah, now, Shoeless Joe Jackson is a figure in baseball that really one of the main kind of gods in the realm of the sport.
Gods in the realm. Okay, I'll tell that to my baseball friends. That's what my non-baseball friend described the game.
Yeah, so he had an interesting story.
Yeah, he did. So Jackson was uneducated. He grew up and he started playing like in the early days of the game, which was you'd have these towns that would sponsor these teams or these factories or these mills that would do that. So he rose through the scene over there, and then he got into Major League Baseball. And unfortunately, he was involved in the 1919 World Series, the Black Sox scandal, when he was playing for the Chicago White Sox. And they were bribed by Arnold Rothstein to throw the World Series in a gambling scandal. And when word of it got out through the investigation, Jackson and 7 other guys who were given the money were banned for life. Jackson took the money, but he didn't throw the game. So there's the unfortunate reality, like how Ray talks about in this movie, that his father claims that he saw Jackson play in his older years, like in his 50s, 60s, out of shape, barely able to do anything like that. So it's considered a bit of an injustice because he clearly didn't throw the game, and he's not allowed to be celebrated for his accomplishments.
So my first introduction to Shoeless Joe is on Pawn Stars. There's an episode where Rick buys an autograph supposedly by Shoeless Joe Jackson, which is a very interesting one because that they were so different because of his illiteracy. And basically, he bought the thing for a decent amount of money, and it turned out to not necessarily... It couldn't be authenticated, basically.
Just need to get a notary.
Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to analyze forensically. Just in the moment.
And the other thing I love about Jackson's story and the Black Sox scandal, I have to ask Coda, were you ever assigned to read The Great Gatsby in any of your classes in school?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Did you actually read it?
The question you asked was, were we assigned?
That's fair to say because I was assigned to read it and I didn't read it either. So if my junior year English teacher, Mr. Benson, is listening to this, I apologize, but I think he knew right away that I didn't read it.
And Mr. Fogel, if you're listening, I probably read some of it. Yeah, fake it till you make it.
I think that's what school is all about, but the character that I will never forget from one of the lessons. So like I said, I didn't read the book, but I listened to the lessons, and some of the details will always stick with me. And there is a character in The Great Gatsby named Meyer Wolfsheim. He's a friend of Gatsby who alleges that this is the guy who organized the scandal of the 1919 World Series, not Arnold Rothstein. And my favorite little detail is written that Wolfsheim's cufflinks are actually made from human molars, and he is not a dentist.
Molars for cufflinks. I think I have mine from the oral surgeon somewhere, but imagine I turn them into cufflinks. I give them to my dentist, who I believe listens to the podcast, although I probably wouldn't attract the right crowd.
Getting back to Shoeless Joe Jackson, is when Ray, Kevin Costner's character, is giving the narration, filling the audience in on Jackson's background. He's it's done as he's explaining everything to his 5-year-old daughter, Karen. He is explaining it to her. He's like arguing and referencing statistics and going on. And he's saying, how can anyone have said that he was throwing the game with those statistics? And she's like, I don't know.
Those lines are the kids just like, yeah, one. But it's funny because sports betting is pretty mainstream now, and it's because they were able to get regulation on it and stuff. I mean, nowadays you go to jail for point shaving.
Yeah, I mean, one of my other favorite details about point shaving and stuff like that is one of the earlier movies that we covered was Goodfellas. And Henry Hill, who is also played by Ray Liotta, who plays Shoeless Joe. Henry Hill was involved in a point shaving scandal for the Boston College basketball team. That was just around the time my dad was in college over there.
It's a different era. I don't think the same kind of schemes you see going on.
Coda, you do know that there is the actual Field of Dreams that is a tourist destination in Iowa.
I wasn't aware of that until you mentioned it, but yeah.
It has a 6,000 seating capacity, and occasionally there are games played there to draw tourists. And these teams have ranged from like locals to matchups between like these entertaining games, like Hall of Famers Bob Gibson, Reggie Jackson versus Kelsey Grammer and Meatloaf.
Oh wow! That's quite the uneven handicap on that.
It would be quite an entertaining game to watch, though.
Absolutely.
To watch Fraser Crane getting in an argument with Reggie Jackson.
Absolutely.
Now, there's the annual MLB game at Field of Dreams, and there have only been 2 so far. The first one was the Chicago White Sox versus the New York Yankees in 2021, and then the next year, the Chicago Cubs played the Cincinnati Reds, and games have been on hold, but they will resume in the future.
Oh, I'll have to keep my eyes out for that.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that I could be paying attention to a little more baseball, at least compared to how devout I was as a child, like a fundamentalist. But I thought it was weird. I thought they were doing these games every year, but okay, I'll keep my eyes out for that then.
Well, COVID threw a wrench in everything.
Well, this was after COVID.
That's true.
But COVID did throw a wrench in everything. We still are all confused about what day it is.
We still use the same excuses, even though it's no longer applicable, but it's
been 5 years,
acceptable.
Man. So we have Kevin Costner as Ray Kinsella. I mean, what do we need to say about Kevin Costner? He's incredibly prolific. I mean, Yellowstone. Did you watch Yellowstone?
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes of it. Really dramatic. Yes, really a decent actor.
Yeah, I mean, very, very different from this movie right here. I still haven't seen it yet myself, though. We also have Amy Madigan as Amy Kinsella. Annie Kinsella, I'm sorry.
Annie, they're pretty close. I can forgive that.
That's true. She's also married to Ed Harris, and she made another movie in 1989 along with this one with her co-star in this movie, Gabby Hoffman as Karen, their daughter, and they were in the John Hughes movie Uncle Buck with John Candy.
Oh, wow.
And then we also have James Earl Jones as Terrence Mann. Do we really need to say anything about his legacy?
I don't think so. What I will say, though, is this is the first time I've seen him on screen. We're used to his voice of God style narrations.
This is CNN.
Not deep enough, Kevin.
But above all, with James Earl Jones, we all know him as the voice of Darth Vader and as the voice of Mufasa in The Lion King.
Yeah, and you mentioned to me earlier that you typed in Mufasa and you didn't get a spell check. That's got to be like the ultimate endorsement of something becoming mainstream.
Yeah, that your spell check doesn't mark your name or anything like that. And then we also have the man, Shoeless Joe Jackson, being played by Ray Liotta from Goodfellas, one of our first movies. Coda, I know you have trouble recognizing faces, but were you able to pick up on this one?
I was, because we had done Goodfellas, and I was like, oh yeah, right. But I gotta give my disclaimer, and for the listener, I'm holding up a yellow card right now for a penalty.
But
Because
are no
Kevin Costner's character is named Ray, and then they have Ray Liotta playing Shoeless Joe Jackson. That's just confusing.
there are no penalties in baseball, man. They just eject everybody.
Well, there are when I'm playing.
They just eject people. It's all based on arbitration, I guess. And like everybody can get ejected, not just the players, but the coaches, the managers, and fans can get ejected. And even the organists have been ejected for playing Three Blind Mice.
I had not heard about the organs. The fan, I definitely, Mookie Betts famously got the ball manhandled out of his hand by some Yankees fans. That was an interesting thing. But he, I know for sure, was on the Red Sox before the Dodgers.
Don't remind me. Don't. I mean, it was that was one of the many horrible things that happened in 2020. That was just before the lockdown, and that was when they realized, oh, damn it, we got the best player in baseball, and we haven't had a deal worked out. We got to trade him so we can get something out of this. But what team is going to take the best player in baseball for one season? So you ultimately were given like these unknown guys that still aren't making any impressions nowadays.
Yeah, and I guess that's been kind of a albatross for the Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the first baseball game I ever went to, I think it was 2015, he played in that game, and we probably included some B-roll over this that I shot on a Super 8 camera, which was kind of fun. And then, cast-wise, we have Burt Lancaster.
Ah, yes. So he was in From Here to Eternity with Donna Reed, who played Mary in It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart's wife. Yeah. And he won the Academy Award for Best Actor for Elmer Gantry, I believe. And the script was written and the film was directed by Phil Alden Robinson. I don't know too much about the man himself. I wasn't able to find too much about him. But it's still good to know that if you did make one major movie, it was one like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always try to get into some of the more technical, visual type things. I had some observations in this film, for sure. The movie takes place basically in a cornfield, and you have the baseball field within that field, which clearly they set up and used. But a few of the shots looked like they used mats, which you'd usually use for like these expansive, think Star Wars or something, where they're walking across kind of the big abyss, or Indiana Jones, any of those. But in this movie, I thought that was kind of weird. But the other thing I noted that is actually a great little cinematography trick of the era is the use of what I assume would be what's called a tobacco filter, and I'll demonstrate this as a separate video. But so this is the tobacco filter, but
for our listeners over here, you'll have to check out our YouTube video. Coda is holding up these squares that are used as filters for the cameras.
Yeah, so this one, brown is probably the best way to describe. Slightly orangish brown. And then we have, in this movie specifically, I noticed that it wasn't a full tobacco. It would have been a graduated, which this one is not tobacco. I'm holding up again another one of these squares. On one side, it's clear glass, and then on the other part, as you move along the vertical axis, it's a more purple tint to it, and you'd use that if, let's say, you wanted the sky to look very dark or some color, but have the rest of the environment not look that way. And these are old tricks of the trade. We still use them in modern days. A lot of this can be simulated in the computer, but it's still always fun to do it in camera when you can.
I mean, indeed, even like you can do that on your phones nowadays. You can go to the App Store and find other cameras besides the ones that were given to you as the standard over there. So and you can apply all these filters, and there are even so many things that you can do with the given camera with what you have
Yeah.
right now.
Absolutely. I think that's always worth exploring because it expands the creativity, I would say. But back then, this would have had to be a conscious choice that they knew once they put that filter in front of the camera, there's no pulling it out in post. It's in there. All right, so that's me talking about cameras. Kevin, I think you like to talk about books. Tell us about the book for this movie.
That makes me feel so smart right now. I wish I was as good of a reader as I used to be when I was growing up. I think the problem is just the internet and the instant dopamine hit that you get from your phone and your Instagram and everything like that. It's just, I got to rewire my brain.
Take the compliment.
This was based on a novel called Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella, and the movie, when it was finished, it was released on May 5th, 1989, budget of $15 million with box office sales at $84 million. So that was a financial success. I could have a really, really hard time listening to someone saying, oh, no, that's not a good financial move.
Yeah, and this movie definitely got some critical reception.
The top critic that comes to mind for me is actually our 43rd president, George W. Bush. He has referred to it as his favorite movie. He said it reminded him of playing catch with his father.
Ah, yes, George Bush, the film connoisseur.
He was the decider, right?
Well, I guess so.
Yeah, Roger Ebert, he gave it a perfect 4 stars, and he found it reminiscent of a movie by Frank Capra with Jimmy Stewart. I mean, we talked about It's a Wonderful Life, too. Doesn't it kind of feel like that with this supernatural aspect of it, this realist fantasy?
I can see that.
Like Groundhog Day as well.
Absolutely.
And it was added to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2017. We discussed that registry within the Singing in the Rain episode as well.
Oh, yes.
It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. That would be Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Score for James Horner. Are you familiar with his music?
Yes, he's done a number. I believe Avatar.
Yeah, there's also Titanic and Braveheart as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so pretty big name.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he passed away 10 years ago in a plane crash, though, so.
It's unfortunate.
And I think the big thing we have to talk about over here is the vibe of this film is the sentimentality. Somebody on Rotten Tomatoes, when they gave it the 88% fresh rating, they said Field of Dreams is sentimental, but in the best way. It's a mix of fairy tale, baseball, and family togetherness. So, what do you think of the sentimentality in it?
Definitely sentimental. I did find myself halfway through really wondering, is this going to be a Wizard of Oz alarm clock style ending?
Yeah, it does. It's one of those things where if you ask too many questions, it sort of starts to crumble. Kind of like, did you see Spider-Man No Way Home?
I didn't, but yeah, I see where you're getting.
Yeah, so it involves taking like this multiverse theory and pulling the Spider-Men from their adaptation and their villains and redeeming them and throwing them back. And it's the whole thing about the grandfather paradox and everything. Wait a minute, aren't you just messing up the space-time continuum with this?
Well, so your argument, I guess, from what I'm picking up on, is that the nostalgia helps suspend disbelief.
Well, I mean, it communicates through emotion. This movie totally communicates through emotion. And unfortunately, when this opens the door for you potentially tossing logic and everything else out the window, like literal logic, like, not the stuff like, okay, be smart, something like that. Like, wait a minute.
All right, so you opened the door for me to then go on and rant about this. Let's break this down from a real estate and financial perspective. Okay, so I was looking up some of this stuff, and there have been like op-eds. I believe it's an op-ed, but the Des Moines Register: Field of Dreams worth $42,000 in Iowa corn since the movie. You know, that's all great. That's accounting we're doing now, but within the movie, I struggle with this concept. He plows down part of the field, and it's been estimated around 3.5 acres. It's a pretty large field, but I thought, that can't be. Is that all that much corn? Then I said, well, let's run some numbers, and I used to give it the best possible case for. Basically, I used today's inflated numbers for what the price per bushel of corn is, around $4.77 at the high end. There's about 180 bushels per acre. So even in that most expensive framing of it, it would have only been about $1,100. Is that really going to bankrupt the operation? I mean, come on. And that's just the concept of you have corn or you don't. But he plowed the corn down. The corn's not growing back during that season. But, I mean, you could always rent out the baseball field. When the whole movie is predicated on this lousy accounting, for me, that falls apart.
Coda. Big
What?
news. I just got a text. We have a pope.
But Pope Francis just died a couple days ago. How is that even possible?
Oh, we did start recording on the 25th, the week that he did pass away, but you were still going on about that, and I didn't want to interrupt you, so we had the conclave and everything.
I see what you did there.
And how about something that's relevant for all times? That there's one particular scene in this movie that when you are watching it, it's not related to baseball or anything like that. It is a town meeting about banning books from the school library and curriculum. I mean,
This scene, it's like your over-the-top town hall. I'm sure at the time it definitely seemed over the top. But you asked me about that. You're like, hey, Coda, what did you think of that town hall scene? And I was like, oh, boy.
yes. So just to remind everybody, the scene we're discussing is how we are introduced to James Earl Jones's character, Terrence Mann. So he is a controversial author, and there is this incredibly prude, pearl-clutching woman at the town meeting saying, oh, this book is perverse and pornographic, and we should not be letting our children read this, and he is a communist. That happened before we were born.
And I get that at the time this was done in an exaggerated manner for comedic effect, but looking back at it today, I'm like, oh, wow, this was kind of tame. There weren't any tasers deployed.
Here's something that I've picked up on. Has anybody who has ever advocated for banning or burning books to keep them out of the sight of children, have they ever emerged on top in the history books?
On the right side of history, Kevin, I think you know the answer.
Well, I mean, there are exceptions to the rules, but that's the problem, is that everybody else is going to look at the exception to the rule and think that it applies to them. So, ha!
Yeah, well, there's always that, and that's not the point. But yeah, so anyway, it's a fun movie. It's nice. I think it's great. The whole family can watch it. Just don't overthink it.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where you have to let your feelings guide you, not your brain.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Well, that does it for Field of Dreams. That was Kevin's pick. My pick, I picked The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is a Coen Brothers movie. If you didn't know that initially, that would possibly explain why Kevin recommended that we choose a more well-known Coen Brothers movie. And I wanted to keep it lighthearted, so I went with The Big Lebowski.
Oh, you're going to make my dad super, super happy. I mean, this is... We definitely had to keep it lighthearted because like we said, we don't want to be pessimistic in this day and age. One of their movies, No Country for Old Men, that is the themes are a little dark and there is a lot of violence in there. So we figured, okay, maybe on another occasion, but not for now.
Yeah, there's no captive bolt pistols in this film, just a regular pistol. Market Zero!
For everybody who hasn't picked up on that, that is when John Goodman's character, who is an absolute, like, adamant rule follower in the game of bowling, pulls a gun out on someone for making a minor little mistake, saying, Market Zero.
Walter, put the piece away. Well, I also get to pick this week's fun fact, and we listened to Conan O'Brien's podcast, and they bring up all these kind of random things. And what came up at one point was the iron lung. And they said, oh, is this something people would still even know about? And either Sona or Matt pointed out, yes, because it was in The Big Lebowski, and that's a big movie. Martha Lillard is a 76-year-old living in Oklahoma, and she is the last person known to be relying on an iron lung to breathe to this day.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I mean, this thing looks like something out of a Jules Verne novel, really. But it's this massive...
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of our other movies.
Really, it looks like something you would have seen in that film. But yes, the iron lung, still apparently breathing.
Who would have thought?
Well, that's going to do it for us today on Movie House Mystics.
I'm Kevin Gainey.
And I'm Coda Ewell. Tune in next time for The Big Lebowski. Movie House Mystics, hosted by Kevin Gainey and me, Coda Ewell. Theme music by The Fat Rat. Tune in next time for The Big Lebowski.